Boleh kita mula, Prof?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
That is very good.
Okay. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, and very good morning to our esteemed coordinator, Research Cluster Office, Professor Dr. Saiful Anwar Kasani, our honorable panels, Professor Dr. Azizan Haji Abu Samah, Professor Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez, and Associate Professor Dr. Putri Shafinas Akhmar Abdul Rahman, and distinguished participants. It is my pleasure to be a chairperson for this forum. I'm Zabidi, the Deputy Dean Research Cluster, Social Advancement and Happiness, and on behalf of the Research Cluster Office, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate your taking time of your busy schedule to join us today. We hope you will learn a lot today. We have a lineup for you to be fruitful and engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin this program, we are pleased to have Professor Dr. Saiful Anwar Kasani, Coordinator Research Cluster Office, to deliver the welcoming remarks. Prof. Saiful, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zabidi. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, selamat pagi. Again, I would like to thank everyone for their attendance. A bit of a background about this session. This actually came about after the Research Cluster Open Day, where there was suggestions from the research centers that they would like to be more visible. And one of the ways that the research cluster can help is by providing a platform for them to share a little bit information about their respective research centers, what they do, so on and so forth. And I think it's a good thing because we know that UM has many research centers, but we know very little about the types of research that's being done there, what their achievements are, who their members are, so on and so forth. So as a first step, this is actually the first sharing session by 3 researchers, and they will be sharing about their respective research. Firstly, I'd like to thank the panel members here, Dr. Azizan, Prof. Terence, and Dr. Putri for a good start off. This will eventually be a regular session, and it's going to be held at least once a month. And we will rotate between different centers from the different research clusters and also the centers from faculties. About research centers, they were actually originally formed. The university wanted centers that were multidisciplinary in nature, so that these centers can solve problems that otherwise are not solvable or cannot be tackled by individual researchers. So that's the spirit of the research centers. And I know many of the research centers have done all this and performed quite well, and some has actually been elevated in status to being UM research centers and also to high COEs. And it is our hope that eventually all of you will reach that level of excellence and be awarded the title high COEs. And again, I thank everyone for their time, and hopefully we get a meaningful discussion. And I pass back the event to SBD. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Saiful, for the informative information and also informative remark to us. And now I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Chuan Jun Ching, Deputy Dean Frontier of the Natural World Research Cluster, to become the moderator for this forum. Dr. Chuan, you have the floor. Mute, Dr. Chuan, still muted.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Zabidi. We are fortunate today. We have 3 well-known speakers from different research center. Our first speaker, right, without further delay, okay, I want to introduce our first speaker, Professor Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez. He is the professor from Political Economy at Faculty of Economic and Administrations. He specialized in state market relations and the linkage between politics, public policies, and enterprise developments, a subject on which he has published extensively, writing not only for academic but more widely. He has held a position as a visiting professor at School of International Relations and Pacific Study at University of California, San Diego, USA. He has undertaken various research projects and conveyed numerous international conferences, among others, on the political business linkage in East Asia, equity distributions and government intervention in Malaysia, all of which have received funding from various local and global agencies, including the Sasakawa, Sumitomo, and Toyota Foundations, and etc. He is the editor for the Chinese World and Malaysian Study series for the Roche, London, and New York. Let us together invite Professor Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez. Professor Edmund, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Juan. I'd like to share my screen. I have some slides which I would like to put up. Let me know if you can see it, please. Sorry about that. Is it, can you all see it now?
It's loading. Yeah, you can see now. Yes. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks.
Now, today, what I would like to do is, I would not want to focus solely on the center, the North-South Center, which I'm leading at the moment. I would like to talk about the context as to why the North-South Center was, in fact, created, and what we are hoping to get from the center, which has just been set up recently through an amalgamation of 4 different centers. I want to get into the problem of what's happening in the world today, the context. Now, most countries are, as we know, confronted with the COVID crisis. And what we are seeing is that what the COVID crisis indicated around the world was the limited capacity for most countries to innovate quickly to deal with this problem. Now, this problem about our capacity to innovate, and I say our, I mean worldwide, is a problem that has existed long before the COVID crisis occurred last year. In Malaysia itself, if you look at the economy, we had a middle income trap, which had been in place for some time. And we knew that to solve this middle income trap, we had to take a more interdisciplinary approach to dealing with it. And we also needed to focus a lot of attention on R&D, research and development. This problem that I'm talking about was also seen in the United States. In the United States, the prominent magazine Newsweek, as far back as 2009, said that that country was in serious decline. And we know that the United States is in serious decline in terms of its quality of innovation. China is just superseding them in a way which is embarrassing US no end. And the US, even as far back as 10 years ago, started talking about the need to improve scholarship in maths and science. Singapore and China were moving in a different direction. They had already focused a lot of attention on promoting maths and science in education, but they were beginning to realize that they had a problem in terms of problem solving. They lacked creativity. Their students lacked creativity, or they lacked critical thinking. And this then brought up the discussion about little creativity means poor innovation capacity, which means our graduates and our business people, our entrepreneurs, really have little capacity to innovate, to build technology, to drive economic growth. So what this meant was our form of scholarship was really not helping enough to solve real problems. Our form of scholarship was not helping us to become innovative. In fact, there were concerns that it may create new problems. And this was exposed very well during the global financial crisis in 2008. And in my field, in economics, it forced economists to start rethinking how they do their scholarly work. So this brings me to the question of knowledge, creativity, and innovation. Innovative countries that are seen to be truly innovative, there are 2 things we know from history. 1, their emphasis on R&D, and 2, emphasis on high quality education. This was most clearly seen in the East Asian developmental states like Japan, Korea, Taiwan. But the country that's really far ahead now in this is South Korea and China. China too has now emerged very quickly, and you can see there's a lot of focus on high quality education also in China, and a lot of focus on R&D. But what was also going on, both in the United States and China, and I'm stressing US and China because they are the 2 largest economies in the world, was even there was a big debate about the link between education and innovation. We have to transform the way we teach. That form of tutelage to enhance human capital must change. There must be a whole change in terms of the curriculum for the young. There was also a lot of discussion on research. As far back as 10 years ago, already they were talking the research is too dichotomized between disciplines within the social sciences, as well as between sciences, social sciences, and humanities. We were too silo-based, even within our disciplines. What more between the major disciplines within science, social sciences, and humanities? There was really very little interaction, and this was important because you needed that interaction to bring about greater creativity and critical thinking. Now, in the US, when they looked at it, when they were talking about it, they already realized that the problem was the way scholarship went in the US was they became too theoretically focused. If you want to publish, you must be really very theoretically focused. And if you want to publish also, there's a lot of emphasis on quantitative-based and quantitative-based methods. So this emphasis on quantitative type of research and high-level theorizing, we could see a major shift from what was previously area-based studies to theoretical quantitative-based publications. Now, the question about this was, what social impact did it have? There was a major article in the New York Times in 2013, where they talked about where have all the public intellectuals gone? Why is it in the 1970s, 1980s, you could see academics as public intellectuals always appearing on TV, on radio, talking about key problems in the world? Where were they today? So that meant the way we were doing our scholarship had taken away academics from being actively involved in real problems. Now, this meant a major shift, a big shift in thinking in terms of how we should do research, and that's when you will see the emphasis on multidisciplinary research now emerging over the past decade. It was also seen in the curriculum. If you look at the curriculum, there was a new emphasis on the international baccalaureate. Countries that were beginning to move away from, say, A-level type teaching to international baccalaureate, because from young they train them in the sciences and the humanities. Students must be good both in science and in the humanities from young. There were also debates about liberal arts education. A lot of countries began to talk about promoting liberal arts education. And what they meant by liberal arts education, at the pre-university and including in university, there will be an emphasis on sciences and social sciences when they enter the university or just before they enter the university. In China and Singapore, you could see this happening actively. China and Singapore, as I said earlier, in the early days stressed a lot on science and technology. Maths was given a lot of emphasis. Science was given a lot of funding. There was very little funding for the humanities and the social sciences because they wanted to promote technological growth by promoting research in maths and science. And then they began to change. There were questions that were being asked, questions such as, can Asians think? A book was written by Kishore Mahbubani, Can Asians Think? And I remember in a debate with Kishore, I said, you mean can Singaporeans think? And the reason why they couldn't think was because they were not exposed enough to the social sciences, to the humanities, to critical type thinking. And Singapore went on to introduce the Yale NUS College just to promote liberal arts. And more recently in NUS, there was a big debate between to bring together the faculties of science and social sciences, where in the first 2 years, students will be exposed to courses both in the sciences and the social sciences before they specialize. So you can see here already in major universities, there was a big debate about how to change the curriculum to help them think in a more multidisciplinary fashion. Now from here, the idea was this will help them also think more creatively, which will then help promote also innovation they'll be more innovative in their thinking as well as in their research. Which brings me to my point on innovative research. What are we trying to do here today? The purpose of this forum is also to try and promote the idea that here in the university, we are trying to create an enabling framework. And this enabling framework is not just to promote research in particular disciplines, but also to bring together scientists and social scientists to start discussing real problems, very complex problems. Problems in the world cannot be solved from a purely monodisciplinary approach. We have to bring people from different disciplines to talk about how to solve the problems, and it was most clearly manifested when the COVID pandemic occurred. The COVID pandemic is a health crisis which led to an economic crisis, which had major social implications, including social protection. And look what happened. You can't solve this problem by just talking to the doctors. You can't solve this problem just by talking to the economists and those in business. There was a need to bring people together. So that enabling framework I'm proposing here was already talked about, but the COVID crisis clearly indicated to us the urgent need to really get this enabling framework to function far better. Now, within this framework, as I said, what we're trying to do is we are not denying the importance of your training in your particular disciplines. You have to be experts in your particular disciplines. But what also has to be brought together is to bring your expertise into dialogue with people with different expertise, so that different ideas based on your expertise can be put together to come up with better solutions to problems. Now, what this meant was, this is a more holistic approach to problem solving. It also meant that the nature of scholarship would also change. The nature of our research, the way we dialogue would have to change. And the idea here was basically it will lead to innovative ways of problem solving and also training our students. But most importantly, better policies. Policies that can have a real social impact. And we know now that it's urgent. Our research must have a contribution to policies that have social impact. So what is our method? And this brings me to the North-South Center. Now, what happened was we realized, and I want to commend the research team, the research leaders in our university, that there was a need to, the number of centers, especially in the social sciences, tend to be too large. And there was a need to bring them together, consolidate them more. And this is happening now in the social sciences. And in what we saw in the social sciences was, for example, in the area of regional studies, we have centers focusing on Africa. We had a center focusing on Latin America, Japan, Korea. And the focus was on what is happening in Southeast Asia as well as East Asia, very dynamic regions. But the volume of interaction and dialogue, even among these people in these centers, was not good enough, not enough. And this was unfortunate, even though they were all under the broad umbrella of regional studies, and they were all looking at problems which, and I like to stress, had a multidisciplinary approach. If you look at my first point here, they were all addressing somewhat similar issues. Of course, they were discussing healthcare with the COVID, but they were also discussing issues that were relevant across the region: hardcore poverty, rural underdevelopment, very poor R&D, the need to nurture domestic SMEs, because all these countries, the key player in the corporate sector are the small and medium scale enterprises, including Malaysia, the big issue of affordable housing, and that large issue about social cohesion, conflict, problems arising from racial and religious tensions in the region. And in spite of the fact that there was this cross-border type research going on, as well as each of them looking at these issues, and they were all doing similar work, there was no real coming together of these academics. Now, in that spirit, given this multi-institutional framework that we had, why don't we bring them together and strengthen them by having one umbrella organization called the North-South Center? This was an example of institutional change introduced by the current management. Now, the North-South Center has under its ambit, as I mentioned, Africa, Latin America, Japan, and Korea. The whole idea here was, how do we promote better research, bring together academics? And I want to stress this, we are not only looking for academics in the social sciences. If you look at the range of problems that we are talking about, we are looking at it from a comparative perspective. And we realized also that if you want to do this from a comparative perspective, the problems are so complex, we also need to bring in people from the sciences. And one recent endeavor by the Japan Center within the North-South Center was to gather academics who were trained in Japan, and I'm happy to say that nearly 50 academics turned up. I was surprised to see how many of our academics in UM were trained in Japan. And they were from various disciplines, from both the sciences and the social sciences. And the idea was for them to become associate members And then once they come together, we try and promote research projects which cross disciplines. But another dimension, and I want to stress this, is we want to promote PhD research. The center's ultimate focus is to make it a center for research where we bring in postgraduate training. And the postgraduate training can also be interdisciplinary. We prefer it to be interdisciplinary, but if students also wish to focus on their own particular monodiscipline, it's fine. But the idea is at least there's a dialogue and there's an exposure to the importance of interdisciplinary research, and there's an exposure to comparative type research. Much of our research that we do in Malaysia is focused only on Malaysia. This kind of center promotes comparative research. Comparative research allows us to get feedback from different countries, which is very important. How do different countries deal with a similar problem? What are their policy recommendations? What are the implications, the output? So the purpose of the North-South Center is to bring into dialogue academics from across these different regions. And that's already started. The work on this has already started. So the outputs, what are we looking in terms of outputs? We do believe if we promote this kind of research, where the dialogue is now between disciplines, as well as between academics from different countries, the quality of our theoretical discussion will be better. With the context of our research will be wider, comparative. We will think more broadly, we will be exposed to different ideas, different viewpoints, especially in emerging economies dealing with similar problems. In terms of theorizing, our theorizing will be better because of the larger number of countries that we're looking at. Second, the volume of empirical data will be huge. And our students will be exposed not just to research in one country or to the context of one country, they will be exposed to the context of many developing economies. And this is important. As I said earlier, much of our research, when we do our research, I'm talking social sciences, we tend to focus only on one country, maybe two. But it's time for us to help our students broaden their thinking as well as their reading by also looking at other countries. And this will then lead to higher quality scholarship. Second, if we do have this kind of high quality scholarship, what will this mean? In terms of our output and translating that output into public policies, it will definitely be better. This is something we have to do more of as academics, our role as public intellectuals. And as our role as public intellectuals involves including contributing input into the making of public policies. But when we make policy recommendations, we should make sure we do no harm. In fact, we are trying to solve problems. We must make sure our scholarship is sound so that when we make policy recommendations, it is based on grounded research, which will help solve problems. The other issue which we are very focused on is how well trained are our graduates. Now, there's a big debate out there in the public domain about the quality of our graduates. And here again, I'm speaking about the social sciences. I'll leave the scientists to talk about what the debate is about our graduates who are trained in the sciences. But the public domain, in the public domain, there's much talk that they're not happy with the quality of our graduates. And I'm here now talking not solely about our undergraduates, but even among some of our postgraduate students. I've had complaints from people from research institutes and consultancy firms saying that the quality of our PhD students also is just not good enough. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate whether they are right or wrong, but I am raising this point because that's the feedback. And if you get the feedback, critical as it sounds and as upset as we are to hear these things, what are we doing about it? So one endeavor here is to go back to how we train our students, to the nature of our scholarship, how it then informs our research. And I think this institutional framework that we are trying to create is important. It helps train our students better, give them more confidence. But the other thing which I want to focus on is our links with industry. The way the economy is moving now, it's changing very fast. Gone are the days when the pace of change within an economy was slow. It doesn't change so fast. But now with the rapid rise of technology, technological innovation is occurring at a rapid pace, and things change very quickly in the economy. And we also see it in terms of firms. We see new firms coming up, e-marketing, e-business. We see unicorns like Grab and Kodak. They're coming up very quickly. These are new forms of creating businesses. They're all tech-based. And they also don't have longevity. They also can tend to be taken over very quickly. Look at what happened to Shopee and Lazada. Lazada were Southeast Asian firms which were taken over by larger firms. So there's a need here also to look at our links with industry, to be kept abreast with what's happening within the area of how technology is changing, how is our own R&D in the university, and are we equipping our students with the skills to when they enter this fast-changing economy, these rapidly changing technological changes that we see, are they well equipped to deal with it? Are we training our students also to become entrepreneurs in their own right, to use their research, to use their education, to create new technologies? These are important questions that we are asking, and we know we can't do that solely by focusing on the social sciences. We need to work with the scientists too. And that's why centers like this are important. It facilitates the bringing together of people from the sciences and the social sciences so that we can help train our students, especially the postgraduate students, master's level, PhD, in a better way. And finally, the implications of all this is that we will help foster equitable development and greater social interaction. So I come to my last slide, at my conclusion. I want to say this. I am happy with the way the North-South Center has been formed, in the sense that we are now in a rapidly globalized world. We talk about it all the time, globalization. What does it actually mean? What I would argue here is that unlike the old days when I became an academic in the 1990s, today the way we communicate with academics is so easy. We can communicate with any academic, any part of the world at the click of a button. We can find out very quickly the research that is going on. It's so easy to get access to published work. And if we have collaborative work, it's also easy to bring together the data from different countries so that they can put their data together to solve a problem. Now, for example, in the North-South Center, we have just submitted a research proposal with funding to be given by the Malaysian and French governments, where we have brought academics from different parts of the developing economies to look at the problem of food security. And when we looked at food security, we are looking at what's happening in Latin America. We're looking at what's happening in developing parts of East Asia, as well as the more industrial parts of East Asia. We're looking at how they're dealing with the food security problem that has emerged also because it was there before the pandemic. It's become worse after the pandemic. And we found it's not difficult to bring together academics from different parts of the world, and we came together and we put together a team of academics from different parts of the world to submit this proposal to get funding. We could not do this in the old days. So the facilities are there for us to promote this kind of interaction between academics across the globe. It is easy also to bring together the research findings, to put it on the table and then to debate it. And this is what we're trying to do with the North-South Center, these kinds of research projects. So I'd like to end here on this point. These kinds of multidisciplinary flagship projects that we're trying to promote can be done if we can get centers like this, greater participation by academics from into the centers across the disciplines to help us move in the direction in which I have just pointed out here. Thank you. Dr. Wan, back to you.
Thank you, Prof. Eman. Very enlightening talks by you about this center. Stay tuned. We will have our Q&A session later on by our three speakers. So let us move to our second speaker, our lovely Associate Professor, Dr. Putri Shafinas Abu Rahman. She received her tertiary education at University of Malaya. She is awarded by the Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship Commissions of United Kingdom a side doctorate scholarship to pursue her PhDs in what we call the proteomics at the Nottingham Trent University and the University of Malaya. She completed her PhD in 2007 and joined Department of Molecular Medicines at Faculties of Medicines. Dr. Putri is founding member and the current head of Universiti Malaya Center for Proteomics Research. She is actively involved in various research activities and has published more than 45 journal publications with a H index of 10. She is a recipient of numerous research grants with the cumulative total of more than 2.5 million as a principal investigator. Dr. Putri also the head of the Faculties of Medicine's Central Research Laboratory and designated facility with a state-of-art equipment for the proteomics and genomic research. So let us welcome the Associate Professor Dr. Putri. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you thank you very much, Dr. Joanne, for the very kind introduction. Okay, I'll start with probably sharing my slides first. Okay, do let me know if you can view the slides already.
Yeah, you can see your slide now.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Right. Okay. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone present today. Firstly, I would like to thank the Research Cluster Office for kindly inviting me to be part of this sharing session, and for me to be able to introduce to all of you the center that I'm involved in, and which is the Universiti Malaya Center for Proteomics Research. Okay, we're probably going to change a little bit from Prof. Terrence's mode of presentation, which is on sort of like social science and multidisciplinary, to a little bit more of a science-based center. Yeah. Okay, sorry, there seems to be a problem. Can you still view my slide?
Yeah. I can still see your slide. Yes.
All right, I can't see my slide. That's the thing. 1 second. Okay, so it's back again. Right. So let me start with how, in terms of the establishment of the Center for Proteomics Research in UM. Okay, what started was is that it was founded by a group of academics working in the area of proteomics research. This is mainly academic staffs from the Department of Molecular Medicine in Faculty of Medicine, and a few young senior lecturers who were based in Faculty of Science, which is specifically in the ISB. Okay, the center was approved by Senate in May 2010, but I can tell you a bit that it's the work that we started was way much earlier. Yeah, I still have problem viewing the slide. Sorry, this didn't happen earlier. Okay, and the original purpose for this center establishment is to support the implementation of proteomics research activities, as well as to initiate collaboration between the expert proteomic researcher and those who are interested to use the technology for their research. So, as I mentioned, even though
we can't see your slides.
All right. Okay. I can see my slides now. Okay, let me stop sharing and try it again. Okay.
Maybe we can get the. I think a copy was sent to cluster. Yeah, maybe cluster can share the slides.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, a copy was sent to cluster.
One moment, yeah.
Diana, could you share the slide, please? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I think it's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, this is the slide from center, from cluster. All right, okay, so I was here. So can we move to the next slide? Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned that the activity actually started way earlier in early 2000, in early of 2000, okay, because at that point of time, the technology or the area of proteomics was rapidly emerging. Okay, and what we had in University of Malaya was the first established proteomics analysis facility, okay, that was equipped with instrumentation for two-dimensional gel electrophoresis and a mass spectrometer for biological samples. So at that point of time, they had we had a number of requests for us to handle training, also to have seminars or lectures to explain to interested researchers what are the theories and also the principles behind proteomics. So this led on to a series of workshop at the national level and received very good support, and also from the faculty members as well as interested parties from other institutions around Malaysia. So if you see at the bottom, that would be the existing proteomics facility that's located in Central Research Laboratory in Faculty of Medicine. So this now also houses high-end mass spec equipments for proteomics and metabolomics work. Okay, can we move to the next slide? So the objective of the establishment of the center at that point of time was to provide a well-equipped research laboratory for the advancement of proteomic research at UM. So having said, in terms of equipment for this kind of work, it is rather costly. So it only makes sort of like sense that, for us to actually procure equipment and be able to share it with the rest of the community, research community in UM who's interested to utilize it. So having said that, once we had the equipment, we also went on to provide training as well as services for the research work. And of course, the long-term goal is actually to be a premier research center in the field of proteomics, not just at the national, but also at the international level. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so you've probably heard me repeating this word proteomics quite a number of times, and looking at the list of participants, I think we come from a very wide background. So maybe if I can explain a little bit in terms of the, it's not just proteomics, there are multiple omics studies that are currently being conducted in the research area worldwide. So if you move to the next slide. Okay, these are some of the current omics research. Okay, so what is shown here is genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. But bear in mind, this is a rapidly emerging area. So you'll find or you'll come across many more omics research. Okay, so maybe you're familiar with genomics research, where maybe 20 to 30 years ago, a big project that's carried out is the Human Genome Project, which looks into the genes in human. Okay, a related area would be transcriptomics, where you look at specific transcript of the genes, which is mRNA. When mRNA is being expressed, the product is actually proteins. Okay, so this is where proteomics field lies in, to look at the protein contents in any organism. Okay, also to look at their profile as well as expression. Another very much related area is metabolomics. So if you look at protein profiles in proteomics, you look at the metabolite profiles that's being expressed in metabolomic studies. Okay, can we move to the next slide? Okay, probably just to explain in simpler context for proteomics, yeah. When I mention in terms of profiling protein, we term it as looking into a proteome, yeah. So what is actually a proteome? So look at the example given here in terms of this picture. Okay, it shows the different stages of life cycle of a butterfly. So, but if we look at the adult butterfly, yeah, if we were to extract the proteins and profile it, the entirety of the proteins that exist in the adult butterfly would be its proteome. Okay, so if we were to look at a little bit more in depth, okay, can we move to the next slide? If we look in depth in terms of maybe at the individual life cycle, okay, we have 5 stages here shown in the picture. So we can actually probe to look at the proteome at for each of the stages of the butterfly life cycle. Okay, so what you see below in the boxes, 5 boxes below, is actually representative of 2D gels. Okay, when you extract the proteins from the sample that you want, you can separate it on gels, and this can be visualized using staining methods such as silver stain. So you can see represented below can be the profiles of different protein expression for the different stages of life cycle for the butterfly. So I hope that can give you a snapshot of what is it that proteomics can do. Yeah, so can we move to the next slide? So having said that, just now the example that I've given you is one of the study applications in proteomics research that is called the expression proteomics. So we look for this kind of study. It's mainly designed towards studying the mechanism of diseases or trying to discover biomarkers in types of diseases. Okay, we can also apply proteomics to look into structural representations of proteins in complexes, or to zoom into the organelle level or the subproteome level, okay, to investigate what are the composition at this level. We can also study functional proteomics if you want to look at in-depth a particular function for a particular protein, and this can be also achieved using mouse knockout models. Okay, also to look into post-translational modification. Certain diseases, what happens is that certain sets of proteins are apparently expressed, and they can be sort of like changes at their PTM level, such as the glycosylation and phosphorylation. Okay, for the next two study application, okay, having said that, when you actually do proteomic investigation, you can actually profile protein simultaneously. So this is the advantage, whereby you can actually look into protein-protein interaction, okay, by doing protein network analysis, also proteome mining using the existing database to look into potential drug targets. Okay, can we move to the next slide? Okay, so having explained in terms of all the different application, you know that it involves some sort of separation, but it also involves another set of integrated workflow, whereby, of course, we usually start with a particular biological question. What is it that you want to do? What kind of disease do you want to look at? Do we want to look at sort of like disease versus non-disease? What happened in the disease sample? Or we want to look at in terms of drug treatment or natural product or herbal plant treatment towards a study model or a cell type. Okay, so workflow would involve some sort of separation and identification of the proteins using mass spectrometer. Okay, so following that, the mass spec data is analyzed to identify and also quantify the proteins that we can separate out. Okay, and once this part is completed, the proteomic analysis per se is completed, we continue with functional analysis of the relevant differential proteins to unmask what are the changes that occur on pathways or at the level of interaction between protein to proteins. So this can actually help us to formulate new hypotheses in relation to what was said in the first place in the investigation in relations to our biological question. Okay, so can I have the next slide? Okay, so we move on to what is it that members in UMCPR actually do. Okay, can we move? Next slide. Okay, so our members focus in quite a number of areas, but broadly, it can be divided into biomarker discovery. Okay, we also look into different types of diseases. Some members look into application of proteomic technologies on medicinal plants and also natural product. Okay, in biomarker discovery, we work with clinical samples. This could be tissues or tumors, but majority of us actually work with using biofluids such as serum, plasma, and urine to look at biomarkers. Yeah, in the case of cancer, it's usually to look for potential markers that could be used for early detection of cancer. Yeah, we also look for biomarkers for non-communicable diseases such as for aging and Alzheimer. Okay, for viral diseases or microbial diseases, sometimes we look into markers that could be related to the severity of different strains or different serotypes. Okay, so this could be, for example, in terms of leptospirosis and dengue. So other than looking at human diseases, in terms of biomarker discovery, it's also utilized for plants. Okay, for example, here, right top box, we look for indicators to show for basal stem rot in oil palms, which is quite a big problem in the palm oil industry. Okay, so we look for proteins that can indicate that the stem rot is starting to occur on the palm trees. Also, one of our members actually work to look for markers that can indicate for environmental changes. Okay, this is in collaboration with members of the Antarctic Research Center. This is on a specific fungus. Okay, so for medicinal plants, okay, most of our members actually utilize proteomics to look into what are the effects of the compound or extracts of this plant on either animal models or in tissue culture, and try to unravel the mechanistic basis of these plants or compounds, how they can actually affect treatment. Yeah, a group of us are working on medicinal mushroom. Okay, some of the mushroom that they work with. This is also in relation to the Mushroom Research Center in It's on Ganoderma, Pleurotus, and Schizophilium. Okay, and one of our members is looking very in depth into the tiger milk mushroom. Okay, and on the other box is the names of the plants or herbal plants that we investigate, but of course there are more. Okay, I've just listed some. In terms of natural products, example for like cempedak lectin or the swiftlet bird nest, which is the what do you call it? Well, it's bird nest from the swiftlet birds. Okay, these studies were mainly structural proteomic studies and also functional proteomic studies to understand the constituents of the saliva of swiftlet birds. Yeah, so this is some of the array of work that we do. Okay, but of course this is not limited. It can actually encompass much more than what we have shown here today. Okay, can I have the next slide? Okay, I'll probably not go in detail for this particular slide, but just to highlight in terms of analytical platform that's available, okay, mainly for protein identification where you see profiling there. In itself, we do have a number of mass spec instruments that can be used for biological sample analysis. Okay, this is such as the Orbitrap, which is in HRR. We've got QTOF and MultiTOF in the Faculty of Medicine. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'll just move on to a bit of the activities that is held in the center with the members. So mainly what we have done is to have seminars and symposium to disseminate the research findings of our members. Okay, and more popular is actually the request to have workshops. Okay, so we've had a number of workshops. And some of the bigger ones are listed here, but we also entertain sometimes when students actually approach our members to have a small mini workshop just to learn specific techniques and things like that. Yeah, and one collaboration that I would like to mention would be the collaboration between UMCPR and Medical Biotech Laboratory. This is in the Central Research Laboratory in FOM. Okay, this laboratory actually provides services for protein identification using mass spec. So we've been working hand in hand with MBL towards the accomplishment of accreditation for their service. Okay, this is for the MS ISO 17025. Okay, and how we've been involved is that we develop training to develop competency for their staff, as well as development of quality management documents such as work instructions and SOPs. Okay, so this has been going on for quite some time. If I look at the trainings we've attended with them, it started from 2014. Okay, and even up to now. Okay, we are still working with them. Okay, next slide, please. All right, this would be the slide in terms of the collaborations and achievement for the center, you can see that we've worked with a number of national institutes, yeah, and also a few international universities, some of which we have highlighted here. So maybe I can highlight one or two. With UITM, our member is focusing on working with a group that does work on halal research. Okay, with the IMR, it's the work on dengue and also leptospirosis. For MPOB frame, the Saglik Blimneri University as well as Academia Sinica, it's for the herbal plants research. And with Malaya University, we work closely with a visiting professor, Professor Subramaniam, who actually has this, he's very expert, his expertise is in Drosophila model. So we've been working with him on this model on the anti-cancer drugs for for anti-cancer drugs. Okay, so achievement, of course, the number of publications and also the postgraduate students that have completed their studies under our members' supervision. But of course, one of the sort of like highlight now cap would be the accreditation that was achieved in together with Central Research Laboratory for the mass spec service for protein ID. Okay, they have achieved this in 2017, and more recently in 2020, it's the re-accreditation for the ISO 170252017. Yeah, next slide. Okay, just like to highlight the members of UMCPR. We're quite a relatively small center. Okay, our founding member was Prof. On Hashim. So Prof. On was the head for UMCPR from the sort of like formalization in 2010 up till 2019. And founding members initiated the start of the center was Prof. Saiful Anwar, Dr. Nur Haniza Aminuddin, and also Dr. Adawiyah and myself. Yeah, and at the point of time when we were established, we had our RO at that point of time, Dr. Jamie Jacqueline, and she was instrumental in working with the Central Research Lab for the accreditation. But Dr. Jamie now still a member, but has moved on to be an academic staff. Okay, we have Dr. Fung Shini and also Prof. Tan Ngat Hong, who does a lot of work in terms of snake venom as well as tiger milk mushroom. Okay, Dr. Haniza and Dr. Adawiyah is the ones working closely with the Mushroom Research Center. And for myself, Prof. Saiful and Jamie, we go into biomarker discovery, as well as for the Drosophila model with Malaya University. That's for me and also Jamie. So we also have Prof. Azlina, okay, and also Prof. Sarni from Department of Molecular Medicine. They also do work in terms of proteomics and more in relation to herbal plants and natural product. Okay, one of the most recent addition to our center is our new RO, Dr. Norliana, who has just joined us in March 2021. Okay, March this year. So next slide, which I believe would be my last slide. Right. Yeah. So in terms of promotion, trying to promote the center, if you are interested to actually join us as a member, okay, and having said that, we are also looking into expanding our center membership to include people who are experts in metabolomics research as well as transcriptomics. Okay, this is because we now want to move away from the segmented areas of omics, but to move forward to look into these areas as a whole in terms of a holistic research that looks into systems biology. So having sort of like members from all these different areas would be an added advantage for research, we believe, in UM. Yeah, and of course, other than being a member, if you need services or consultation with regards to your omics workflow, or you also want to attend training, mainly for your postgraduate student, if they want to attend training, and also if you want to collaborate with us, Okay, please feel free to contact myself or also our research officer at UMCPR. Okay, so my email and also Liana's email is shown here. Okay, feel free to drop in a line and we'll be more than happy to attend to your questions. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention. And okay, hope everyone has sort of like a little bit of background in terms of proteomics and omics research.
Thank you, Dr. Putri.
Right.
So stay tuned. So we will have
Okay.
a session later on. So
Okay.
let's invite our third speaker. We have our Professor Dato Dr. Azizan Abu Sama. He is the professor in the field of meteorology in the Department of Geology, Faculty of Art and Social Science in Universiti Malaya. He is the director of the National Antarctic Research Center and the deputy director of Institute of Earth and Ocean Science. He's currently one of the vice president of the scientific committee in the Antarctic Research and is also the editor board of the Polar Journals. He was the Malaysian coordinator of European Union Research Project, SHIWA, which means the stratospheric ozone halogens impact in varying atmospheres, and also the steering committee member of Asia Pacific Rim University World Institute of Pacific Rim City Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Strategy. And he's a member of International Scientific Advisories Committee of Asian Network and Climate Science and Technology. Professor Dr. Azizan is a fellow of Malaysian Academic Science and the Royal Meteorological Society of UK. So Professor Dato Azizan is also one of my what we call the in the same building, like I consider neighbor. He's one of the very well-known professors in the area of Antarctics and also meteorology studies, and he have a lot of what you call charisma. Whenever I meet him in the elevator, right, I always greet him. He's very inspiring people. I remember I talked to Dato Azizan, and he is very inspiring. He's always have this charisma to inspire people. So without further delay, I would like to invite Dato Azizan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I think I'll just ask the Secretariat to share my slide. I think my slide is a bit different. I would like basically to a short note on academic leadership, because basically I think all of you, those who are listening in, all of you have the capacity to build your own center. And I mean, I have a very, let's say, a long career with and I am also currently the interim director of the National Antarctic Research Center. And if you look at the National Antarctic Research Center, the way we built it, we did not put it under It's not in the Senate of It is a joint center between Academy Science Malaysia and the University of Malaya, but it's owned by ASM. And now the center is now owned by Yayasan Penyelidikan Antarctic Sultan Mizan, YPASM. Okay, next. So I'm just trying to inspire you in the sense you are not talking about it. I think each of you, being an academic, have a chance to start your own idea or your own passion and start up a center. But the main thing is that you must be also true to your core value, as Darren Gomez was saying. That center must, wherever you want to lead that center, it must have a core value. I'm a member of the high COE of IOES, and the core center is air-sea interaction. And I basically look after the physical interaction between the air and sea, and we have other people looking at the interaction between land and biology and the air and the sea. So that is existing high COE that we are trying to what you call pursue lah. Okay, next. So the core for me next is that I'm a meteorologist. So all my center work, wherever I am, even in the high COE of IOS or in the Antarctic, I still delve in my core, which is dealing with meteorology. Next, so meteorology, we are storm chasers. We study weather and climate. You can see the main thing is this. What is the temperature? What is the precipitation? Is it sunshine? Is it going to be storm next? Is it going to be a storm? Thunderstorm. So we do work. I do research in thunderstorm. I do research in severe weather. Next. Severe weather, I do work in flash flooding. Next. And also I do work on climate, which things like ENSO, La Nina, and whatever. Next. So that one no need, just basically some of the physics behind it that is necessary. Next. I'm just going very what you call fast. So in 1982, right, and 1990, when I went and do my PhD in meteorology, in Malaysia, you can count how many meteorologists there are with PhD in the country. I think there are only about 3, and 2 of them are in the Met Service. So when you think about, what is the job that I'm going to have, I don't care about it, because the first thing that I went to do is my passion, which is related to weather and climate. So basically what I'm trying to convey to you is that when I entered the field much earlier, this issue of greenhouse, global warming is not really such a what you call in issue, but I enter not because it's the in issue. I enter because my passion that I want to understand weather and climate wherever there is. And that's also the main reason why I work myself in the Antarctic, and also I work myself in the tropic. And that's the passion and the curiosity for me to understand weather and climate. Next. But, okay, so this is the variability of weather and climate. You can see from the graph, it's relatively being driven by CO2. When CO2 goes up, temperature goes up, and then there's an inverse relation. It also has a relation with the sun cycle. So it's a very complex phenomenon when you want to study weather and climate. Next. And one of the other things that whenever I give as a public lecture, I always pointed out that 40,000 years ago, what you see on your left is what is is the sea, the South China Sea. But 40,000 years ago, the South China Sea, big chunk of it was land. And we are actually we are one of the victims of climate change, because when we have the last major glaciation, when the sea level goes down, we had the Sunda platform, and Malaysia is, in a way, right smack in the center of the platform. So we may have savanna-like climate, but now with the melting of the last glaciation, which is 10,000 years ago, what you see is now we are surrounded by sea. And so this is one of the issue of climate change, that we are trying to go into the paleoclimate. You know, what is the future like? Because when you talk about climate change, you want to talk about, you know, what is it the climate like in the 21st century, and you know the issue of modeling comes up. Next. And so this is basically observation of climate changes, where you see red is where major changes, and basically all the colors are showing some changes ranging from 0.2 to 1.5 degree. And I think the globe is supposed to be warmer by 2 degree by the 2050 or something like that. And this will cause a major shift, not only in the climate, but it causes a major shift in the whole global ecosystem. Next. And you have, because of that, you have sea level rise, and you know, and you can see that it has implication. You know, because basically, in a way, my training in 1990 as a PhD, I ran smack into the issue of climate change, which is now the most in issue and the most critical issue that humanity is facing. And you know, it's fortuitous that I'm now inside. I'm now party to many efforts, both locally and internationally, in trying to look at how do we adapt, how do we mitigate, or what do we do with climate change. And as an off-site, the KPT research cluster head for climate change is me. So basically, I determine where research in KPT, what sort of research areas that we would like to fund in the issue of climate change. I'm the chair for that particular area. Next. And when you talk about global warming, it impacts everything, because you can see this climate, the climate produce the biome produce the sort of ecosystem. So, you know, when you talk about climate change, it is a complex change that can occur. And there's two areas in which I'm involved in, is that climate change in the tropics, in which under KPT I have the, what you call, the opportunity to promote research in that area. And the other one is, of course, climate change in the Antarctic, in which I'm a member of the Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research, and I'm an active member as a steering committee of Anti-Climate Now, I mean Antarctic Climate Now, and also, so where we are looking at, you know, how does Antarctic climate going to be changed in 30 or 40 years down the road. And this is a conglomerate of international research from all over the world, that in which one of the component of the research, which is tropical polar research, that is under our leadership. So that's the other thing, that we want to take leadership also. We just don't want to go and follow people, and that's the main important why you want to be in the steering committee of any of these international effort. Next. So that's, I think I've said that already. Next. So you can see in terms of research activities with IOES, which is one center in which I work in. I work in the tropical area, and then as a director of the National Antarctic Research Center, I work also on the Antarctic and the polar region. And the thing is, once you do that, all the cross-fertilization, I developed a niche for Malaysia, in which Malaysia is now trying to control or trying to take leadership of the niche of tropical polar interaction. And we got nearly about, we sold the idea to the government, and in the last, and we managed to get about $9 million, 9 million Malaysian ringgit, to look specifically into this tropical polar interaction. And And all research that we are focusing on, basically in the National Antarctic Research Center, is basically center in this particular niche, tropical polar connection. Next. So this is the niche that we got in, and we got, as I said, 9 million from MOSTI to work on it. And this is managed by, it just finished, but we are trying to get new money so that we can continue with our work. Next. So, well, you know, working in the Antarctic, as you can see in the background, I had the opportunity of visiting the Antarctic, which is quite an incredible place, because it's the only 10% of the Earth that is not governed by any state, but is governed by a treaty. And as such, we also have a policy structure in our NARC, because we have to advise the government on how to engage in the Antarctic, because it involves international law, and international environmental obligation under the Madrid Protocol. So it's, you know, it's not just the scientists, it's also especially the lawyers. And there's also Antarctic tourism. So we do fund people working on Antarctic tourism. Next. I'll try to be very quick. So now, one other thing about being academic leaders, you have to be opportunistic. So when we took the Agong out to the Antarctic, on the plane, we discussed about the setting up of the Yayasan Pendidikan Antarctic Sultan Mizan, in which we managed to secure 12 million from the government to put in, so that one of the issue about Antarctic research and also any other research is the vagaries of funding. If you are not sure of funding, you don't have constant funding, basically the center, if you starve it of fund, then it'll die. So what we did, we established a research trust and endowed it, the government endowed it with about 12 million, with 1 million in addition every year. And also we do a smart partnership in which we have 6 consortium of university contributing every year about 50,000 ringgit every year, so that we can sustain our Antarctic research, even though vice chancellor changes, even to political thing changes, because this is how we are managed to sustain. So in the end, you know what I'm trying to say, the National Antarctic Research Center can exist quite independently of the University of Malaya. That's a nice thing to say, because we think strategically in order for us to be independent. And I think one of the issues of any center is, how do you sustain yourself so that you are independent and you can continue, because the center is in existence from 2002 to now. And now the center is under the Yayasan Pendidikan Antarctic Sultan Mizan. So which means that if doesn't want it, we can move it to somewhere else also. Then the next thing that we did is that we, at the Yayasan Pendidikan, we already in the process of setting up a chair of the Antarctic chair. And we are now negotiating with a few universities, those who like to host the chair. So sad to say, I think has decided that it doesn't want to host the chair. I'm now discussing with UMT how to host the chair. And the last thing is that in that process of me building the center, finally, I also need, this is leadership, okay? I also need to get myself into the board of trustee of the Yayasan, so that some of my ideas can be translated and funded And so this is some of the intricacies that, how I work to sustain a center. Because as you can see, when you have a center, like, what Taryn was saying, the moment the VC change, it must do something, and then the end of the center, and you don't get any funding. So this is some of the issue when you want to hold a center. Next. So I still continue doing my research, both in the tropic and in the Antarctic. Next. I have to be very quick. Okay. So we established the Bachok Marine Research Center, in which poured in about $16 million to set it up. And we established the GAW, the Global Atmospheric Wash, Global Atmospheric Wash, because one of the things that I got fed up with was that whenever I want to ask data from the Met Office, they would charge me a few money. And then when they want to get the data, the whole thing. So what we did, we set up our own GO with the when we set up iOS, and now the data that we got and quality control, we share it with the community, and we use it to leverage with our cooperation with other universities and from internationally. Next, sorry, I'll be very quick. And of course, I still love chasing storms in Bacho. Next. Okay, next. We want to be quick. Well, that's my research area. That's okay. Next. To the last slide. The last two slides. Okay, so that we have time. Okay. One of the things, being here for a long time, I find that the younger generation, you always think research or being an academic is only publishing papers and doing research. Actually, to be a stronger academic, you need also to develop networking. And that is one of my saviors, because in my own let's say life as an academic, I quarrel with VC. I call some VC stupid and whatever, but because of my international network that backed me up, I'm still an important member of the academia in that cannot just be sidelined, because the network that I have is mine. It doesn't belong to whoever is the VC. And if I were to move to another university, I will bring that network with me. So one thing about being a good academic, don't just concentrate on publishing, also build your network. And then you must establish yourself as a player and a leader in an international body, because that's how you get access to the bigger international fora. And if you are active, then you get yourself elected as or you get yourself into the steering committee, and even better, you get yourself leadership, in which then you can determine the global focus. You have people like Zakri, Tan Sri Zakri, who's one of the people who set up IPBEST. So think big. You have the capacity, but you need to be able to excel yourself. The other one, of course, Terence talked about public intellectual. You can see, yourself, one of the, people like Jomo or something like that. We are public intellectual. You can see me on TV commenting on issues related to climate or even related to pollution. And I am involved in the ASM SOP for for bauxite mining, sustainable bauxite mining. I'm also in the SOP for the national rare earth element mining, which Malaysia is trying to do. And so you get yourself into all this, because one of the other things that you must have also is common sense and also a backbone, because sometimes you need to tell people, look, this is what I think. If you don't agree with me, sorry, this is how I do. I'm not going to budge from my particular position. So you must have some backbone, when, especially when you're dealing with politicians. Next. I think I want to finish. And the other one, of course, life is not academia. You can see I love photography and birding. And so this is my colleague, Professor John Turner, who is a very renowned, what you call Antarctic meteorology, published quite a lot, even in Nature. And so sometimes we come over here, and or else he come over to NARC to also help co-supervise our student. Otherwise, than that, we go birding somewhere. Next. Okay. Thank you. What I'm the final thing that I'm trying to say is that each of you has the capacity to be a leader, has the capacity to set up your own center, but you must think big and dream big, and then you try and get a network so that you can then establish that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dato' Azizan, for very inspiring talk. As I mentioned, he's a person that full of charisma. Whenever you meet him, he will inspire you. Okay, that's my take from Dato' Azizan. So let's just move to our next sections, which is the discussions, right? Can the three speakers turn on their camera? So we have Professor Edmund Terence Gomez. Hi, Prof. We have our lovely Associate Professor Dr. Putri. Hi, okay. And our Professor Dr. Azizan. So let me start the sessions. I will ask some common questions, which is always asked by the researcher. And this is about the center that Dato' Azizan has mentioned. What inspired him to start the what you call the centers? So I want to hear from another two speakers, Dr. Putri and also Dr. Edmund. Dr. Putri, what inspired you to suddenly start the center on the proteomics, right? And then you want to venture into metabolomic. Okay. So can you give us some
Right.
ideas? Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned in my presentation, okay, that I'm actually the second generation head, where we actually started the center much earlier. And at that point of time, the senior academics, okay, namely Prof. On Hashim, we had Prof. Ehsan from the Faculty of Medicine, were sort of like our mentors to and you know, as what Prof. Azizan had mentioned in terms of leadership, they paved the way to actually show us sort of like the leadership qualities, and then also in terms of, we realized that we can't just work on our own. We've got to build our network. Okay, so in the case of proteomics at that point of time, it's a very new technology. So this is the chance for us to actually build networks and collaboration. So that actually was what sort of like strengthened our interest to establish the center. Yeah, not just so that, you know, yes, we are all proteomics expert, but we among us, we can also share this knowledge so that other people can utilize this technology. So it's not just restricted to our group. Yeah, so it's also in the spirit of sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Putri.
Yeah.
Prof. Edmund?
Thank you. I'd like to speak more on the Latin American Studies Center, mainly because the North-South Center is a recent construct. It's an amalgamation of 4 centers. Now, when the Center for Latin American Studies was established in 2013, the primary reason for this is that when it comes to trade ties between Malaysia and other countries, we had very little links with countries in Latin America. One could argue that it was the final frontier. We had already established good ties with Africa. We had good ties, of course, with countries in Asia, including developing Asia. But when it came to Latin America, we had very little linkages. And in fact, I must argue here that the government also was quite keen that we should develop these ties. That's the first part. But the good part also about promoting the Center for Latin American Studies is that when it comes to research, academic research, the level of comparative research between Latin America and Southeast Asia when we did a literature review was quite minimal, regardless of discipline. So if we had gone into greater research, comparative research of these two regions, that would have facilitated the publications of the publication of articles which were novel in different disciplines, and that was something that we were trying to promote. Now, how do we promote this here? I must also say that we had a lot of support from the Latin American embassies. They continue to support the Center for Latin American Studies, and here what they did was they helped us create ties with academics in Latin America, and that's good. Because once you create these networks between academics from different regions, they bring their data from Latin America, we bring our data from Southeast Asia. It facilitates a kind of comparative research. However, having said all that, there is one problem. It's a region where they speak Spanish and Portuguese. We speak English, and we are hardly conversant. There are not many of us who are conversant in Spanish. And I don't know many people who can speak Portuguese for that matter. Brazil is a Portuguese-speaking country. So there were these hindrances too. But let me say a few words also about Japan and Korea. Japan and Korea are very important because, especially in the 1980s, there was a lot of stress on the Look East policy. And under the Look East policy, the emphasis was to look at Korea and Japan. And there was a need to build on it. And I must say that these two centers have done some work in that area in terms of trying to develop our ties with research ties with Korea and Japan. One area which I feel we could have done better is Africa. Doing work on Africa is something that we are still lagging behind, and that's something we have to promote. Now, why am I bringing up all this? Because this is where I said we need to build or groom a new breed of academics, Malaysian academics, because foreign academics may leave. For Malaysian academics who know these regions very well, who can then be the pioneers to take this kind of comparative research to the next level. That's what we're trying to do with these centers.
Thank you, Prof. Emmons. Next question is about the opportunities. Dr. Putri has highlighted what's the opportunities, and she welcomed, right, a lot of participations from others researchers to join their groups, and very clear what she wanted from this researcher, right? So the question is for Dato' Azizan. I know that your center is well established at this particular time. What other opportunities the member, what is the expertise that you need or you lacking in your center that others researcher in UM able to join you? So this question I posed to Dato' Azizan and Prof. Edmund. Thank you. Dato', can you start first?
Okay. Every year we have a call from the YPSM for burst support for people who want to work in the Antarctic. We have for the undergraduate, for the postgraduate, we also have funding for them to go and work in any lab of accredited. I think quite a lot of our postgraduate were working with the Korean Polar Research Institute, or they go and work with the British Antarctic Survey. And so we give what you call fellowship money for them. There's to go and work. And every year we advertise. So every year we advertise about $1 million worth of research grant every year. That means 3 years, that's about 3 million every year, and that's from the Yayasan Pendidikan Antarctic. Because one of the things nice about the Yayasan is that for the amount of money that we got from outside, there's a matching grant up to $500,000 from the government to us. So what is quite interesting. We are not in the same position as quite a lot of center of research, where you need to go around looking for money. Because whenever Prof. Hasib asked me, go and look for money, I said no, I'm not interested, because we already got established a research trust to do it. So we are quite in a comfortable situation. So total, we have already spent about 13 million using the Yayasan money. And we have, the nice thing about it is that, it is, we because so it's up to staff to enter, because used to anchor, but
yeah. That's why I'm asking, is it any opportunity, for example, chemists, maybe in your Antarctic study, they have a lot of chemistry need to be there and you are lacking for some expertise, because chemistry also have different areas.
But well, very
Some
simple.
mathematicians, modeling, or now it's very famous is AI. Whether this
Yeah.
is open for other researchers in UN.
We are always open, because we always make a call every year for you to apply for the funding. It's about 150 million. I mean, no, sorry, 150,000 over the 3 years. But if you require to go to your PhD student to go to some lab, there's another 50,000 that you can acquire to. So we are quite in a comfortable situation, and we can plan long. So the setting up of this research trust, to me, is one the anchor for our work, so we can grow it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Dato'. So, Prof. Edmonds, so that you are quite well established in that sense, what the expertise needed at your, or lacking in your center, that you need more expertise in that particular area that will strengthen the center? Thank you.
I'd like to come back to the first point that you asked. The first question was really on opportunities.
Yep.
Now, that's important. Centers provide opportunities way beyond what can be found at the faculties. Now, when I talk about opportunities, how do we build on these opportunities? The opportunities, as far as our center is concerned, what we look at, what we're focusing is on problems, problem-based research. What are the significant problems that exist in our country as well as in other countries? As I said earlier, some of the problems we face here is common in worldwide. So, one example, food security. It's quite a big problem. It's a big problem in our country. It's a big problem in many other countries, including in developed countries. Supply chains, especially with the breakup of supply chains following the pandemic. What are the implications of supply chains? The third one, public health. Public health is a big issue, and that has a social science dimension. It also has a science-based dimension. And the other issue which we are focusing a lot on is issues relating to the environment. And Susanna has spoken about it, but environment has multiple dimensions to it, including issues with disposal of waste, for example. Now, when it comes to solving these problems, especially, for example, food security, supply chains, funding, how do we get it? Now, the opportunities that are available if we create international linkages and go for international funding, because these are problems which we find in many countries. And we do find a lot of people asking for us to apply for this international funding. We do have people asking us to come and join them in our bid for international funding. That's where the opportunities lie. And what's important is that when we get into these projects, one, we learn how to write up really high-level research proposals. Second, we have a mechanism now to create linkages, to create networks, to get to know people from international perspective. And I've already seen this happening. I saw this with our EU project on Horizon 2020. I've seen this with our funding for ESRC, which was on public health. And the number of people we were exposed to were across the board in terms of disciplines, but also across the board in terms of countries. How often do we get these opportunities? So my focus for the research, and that's why the North-South Center is very interesting, because by the very name, North-South, we want to go beyond Malaysia. We want to look at projects from a comparative perspective that expand the minds of our academics who join the center. It will also expand the opportunities for getting funding, because as you know, funding is becoming rather scarce within the university as well as within the country. But I do feel this. When we go for international funding, that's when your opportunities for publications of a higher quality also occur. You're working with other minds, different ways of thinking. Your way of theorizing will change. And the way of theorizing is also important in terms of how you explain your empirical data. And this is where the opportunities lie in terms of why these centers, if you can get people to come in and work on these problems. We tend to talk about problems. We start with the problem. Then we invite people from different disciplines. Who are those looking at these problems? Now come and let's sit and talk. Now, what is a big impediment. The big impediment is that when we bring people from the sciences, they have their own jargon. You bring people from the social sciences, they have their own academic jargon. And you put them together and they don't understand each other, although they're all speaking English, because they're all using their jargon. And this is a problem. But we have to find ways to get around it. And that's why I like this, because we try to understand each other and we interpret it more simply, more accessible across the board. This doesn't matter which discipline you're from. What exactly do these concepts mean? I like Dr. Putri's explanation of which she gave us, which is important. She breaks down all these complex things in a simple way we can understand. And then we get to the heart of the problem, and then we develop our research proposals together. Now, that's something we have to look into. Our academics should not fear coming into multidisciplinary projects. When they hear people speaking a different language, they shouldn't fear it. They should, in fact, try to understand it, break it down. As we like to say in these meetings, and we have had many multidisciplinary type projects, please speak English. By that we mean, break down your concepts to simple English so we know what you're talking about. You know, when they talk to economists or political scientists, or, you know, they don't understand what these concepts mean. You know? The scientists don't have a clue what we're going on about. And I don't blame them. I don't understand many people from the health, from faculty of medicine when they are speaking, or from the science. So that's the problem. But these are things you get used to it as you get into greater dialogue and you begin to overcome this. But that's the barrier I find, especially among the young, in terms of coming out of their respective disciplines and engaging in dialogue in terms of across disciplines and across countries also. The confidence must be there. They must push themselves to get into speaking beyond their disciplines and beyond academics from within this country.
Thank you. Dr. Putri, do you want to add? Dr. Putri, do you want to add anything else about opportunities? This time, I'm sure from your slide, it's very clear. Do you want to add anything else?
Well, in terms of opportunities, as I mentioned, we like to use this platform as an opportunity for our center to expand the expertise, especially in terms of areas that are emerging. Metabolomics has a lot of, I think, a lot of young researchers are involved in this area. So this is a sort of like a good way, a good opportunity for them to actually join a center. Then from there, probably, with our members, we can work out with them in terms of resources, equipments. Maybe they do not know where certain equipments are located in UM, or also we can bridge them to our partnering collaborators. Yeah, so that would really sort of like aid their work. So that would be sort of like my take, probably added point in terms of opportunities for the others.
Okay, thank you very much. So my last questions, before someone have asked some questions here, before we go to the question by the audience. So I want to ask one last questions. Right? The time is not on our side. It's almost 12. I want just one sentence from the panel, like from the speaker. I think like Dr. Azizan and Prof. Edmonds, right, and Dr. Putri have a very good, well-established center, right? What's the next level that you want to bring this center? Is it a high SOE or something else in your mind? Just very brief, just if possible, just put into one sentence. What's the next level you want to bring this center? Thanks. Dato'?
The National Antarctic Research Center is already national.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether we are high COE or not high COE, we are already national. And the thing with the National Antarctic Research Center, it is represent the government in SCAR, that means the Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research. It represents the government in the Antarctic Treaty System, in the CEP, which is the Committee of Environmental Protection of the Antarctic, and it represents the government. So that means we are representing the government in the ATCM, the Antarctic Treaty System. We advise the government. So for us, it's trying to get more researcher and more money for the center. And our main aim actually is for Malaysia to join to help Malaysia join as a consultative member of the Antarctic Treaty so that we can have a vote. And the other one, our other aim is, as I said, we want to establish the chair of Antarctic, which I think we are going to establish at UMT instead of UM. And we are also what you call trying to see a university so that we can really, we have produced so many PhDs now in Antarctic research, but they are not, they are working on other things. So we want to really concentrate and get some university to be involved in Polar Center. And as I said, we are operating at national level. We are not operating at the UM level. Thank you.
Thank you. Prophet Edmund?
Well, you asked me to say in one sentence.
Yeah, one sentence.
Sorry.
One sentence. One
I'll
sentence. Okay. About next level, what in your mind? Let's say you want to bring it to higher level.
I'm very clear on just that one thing I'd like to promote through the center: interdisciplinary research, which is problem-based, where we incorporate people from different disciplines, and it must be comparative, different countries. So that's ultimately what I would like to see the North-South Center doing. That's the direction in which I want to take it. And for that, we need people to come forward. The challenge is for them to come forward so that they can meet these goals. As I said, talk between different disciplines, and do not be fearful to do comparative research, talking to people from different countries.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Putri?
Okay, I'll try to sum it up in a sentence. I think it's difficult to do, but in terms of UMCPR, as I mentioned, we like to expand our scope in terms of the omics area. But I think one area that we would really like to expand also into is in terms of services, providing sort of like to be a reference center that can actually provide services for the omics technologies, for proteomics, metabolomics, transcriptomics, and things like that. This is a way for the center to also generate income and for us to actually be more self-sustaining. Yeah, so that would be sort of like the way that I look forward to.
Okay, thank you. So we have one question from the audience. Tang Siu Xiong is asking Dato Azizan about he want to start the therapy center in the Asia regions. So he's trying to use the fish to the natural enemy for the bacteria to cure all sort of a disease in either agriculture or medicines. So he's asking, is it possible or workable? He need your advice, Dato. Your advice. Yes.
Okay. When I first started and I came back, we set up what you call the Air Pollution Research Center. Myself with Nick Mariam, with Manfred Daus, and with Jamil Ma'ah, and then we work as a group to get money for the Air Pollution Research Center. And then I think at that time Osman Bakar put us under CESM. So my advice is that whatever you want to do, get a group of people who are like-minded, and start to establish your network, because that's how all the other center works. It involves people of like-minded, but in order for you to expand, don't just look at UM. You can either go overseas or you can go within the country. I mean, don't just look at UM, because one of the issue of UM is that sometimes we are like tempurung. We only look at our own pusat. We never look beyond, and this is quite a problem with UM people actually, because when you look, to be honest, when you look at KPT, the people who are in charge of distributing $140 million per year of money, I'm the only UM person there. UKM have 4 or 5. USM has 4 or 5. So where are the UM academics? Because this is the top decision-making body to give grants to the FRGS, TRGS, all the GS. Where are we? And I think this is something that you need to look into. But what happened is that, one of the things that I stayed with KPT from, I mean, for many years, in which I'm just a junior panelist, but I consistently stayed and built myself up until I became ketua cluster, until I became ketua domain. punya professor pergi-pergi, and then lepas tu 2-3 hari dia tahu, this is not good enough, they go and chow. And so is not well presented in all these bodies. So the juniors need, the moment you get invited to be a panelist, stay on and establish your leadership in it and get it recognized so that you can be a ketua. And and it's to me, it's nothing rocket science to see that UKM got a lot of money from KPT, or UPM got lots of money from KPT, because their people are there.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you, Dato', for inspiring this Tan Siu Xiong. So anything you want to add, Prof. Edmund or Dr. Putri, about these questions?
Putri, you can go first if you want.
Well, I think Prof. Azlan had summed it up sort of like quite well. I guess the main take home, even for me, the main take home message that he had mentioned is that, get when you want to go and establish a center, get like-minded individuals. Okay, that was actually what happened for us as well in terms of UMCPR. We had a good rapport between the proteomics researcher, and sort of like that drives us to want to work together. And we also mentor our students to sort of like be experts in this area, and sort of like we want them to help expand also the center itself. Yeah, so yeah, that's my take.
How about you, Prof. Edmund? Anything you want to add?
Yes, I'd like to echo what Dr. Azizan and Dr. Putri have said. What comes first? The thing that comes first is the group. In the grouping, how is that formed? We look at funding proposals also, where they're coming from, what kind of projects that they want, and that's where the initiative comes in. Form a group, and I can tell you, especially for international funding, they are looking for people from different disciplines to come together to put together high-level proposals. Once you get that proposal done, and it has to be, I must stress this, it cannot be just within the university, it also has to be beyond the university, preferably international if you want to get international funding too. Once that grouping is started and the research gets going, that becomes the nucleus for setting up a center if you wish. Otherwise, you can set up a center, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It must have something to propel it forward. So my starting point has always been the grant, a research proposal based on a key research institute funding agency that wants a project, get the grant, develop your networks, then use that as the basis for setting up the center. That would be, for me, the process we move forward.
Okay, I think these are some take-home message for Tan and also others audience here. So I think they are already over our scheduled time, right? So I want to give final remarks as moderators, and also to like to take this opportunity to thank our speakers, really enlightening, and we learn a lot from our speakers here. So my final remark is, the start up a center is not easy. Maintaining the center is much more tougher, right? Okay. So I think all these speakers also giving us the what we call the informations on what is their struggle and how their struggle is, and how they start up the centers, and how they inspire them to maintain and bring the center to the next level. There's a lot of things to be learned from them. I think if we in this 1 hour we can't really get all the information from our speakers. If you are interested, please contact our speaker here to start some collaborative works. This is the opportunities, as mentioned by Dato' Azizan and other speakers, right? We must build our network. I think when you sum up the network, right, the words network, they have mentioned many times. If you count, it's more than 10 times. Okay, so this that's the importance of our research. It's not work in the lab silo and then you sit yourself with the beakers or some computers, but you need to network and build your networkings with others researcher. So without further delays, I want to pass this to our Dr. Ahmad Zabidi, right? Dr. Ahmad Zabidi for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juan, for your excellent job on moderating this session. Okay, we have come to almost end of this session, so I would like to thanks again to our honorable panelists for the informative and interesting talks, and to audience for active participations. Okay, hopefully the sharing experiences session will be beneficial for all of us. Finally, thank you to the Research Cluster Office for organizing this very successful forum, and well done. Okay, before we end this session, could you please, Prof. Saiful and also Juan, on your camera for the photo session, please?
And everyone
Everyone, okay, everyone, please.
else, please. We want to have participants. Kamu tak buka itu? Buka lah.
Siapa yang ambil gambar?
Could everyone turn on their camera, please? We'd like to record this for posterity. Apparently, we only got like 7 cameras on, so can we? Yeah. Okay, just snap lah kot. Yang lain malu-malu. The others are camera shy, so maybe you can just proceed.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Thank you.
One more. 1. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Okay. So
Okay, thank you everyone.
Again. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Well,
Azizan, Prof. Terence, and Dr. Putri.
Just to
Thank
inform you
you.
all,
Thank you.
FRGS should be coming out soon.
Yep.
Because we already sent it to the technical committee, so should be soon out. FRGS.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.